Okay.
You can take evidence with radiallahu.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
I give clarified it towards the end.
Okay. Sure. Salam. Like him, Bobby. अभी किया अभी आ रहा so but yeah, I think we get started inshallah. نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So I guess inshallah we'll continue with the talk on or the topic of Ahlul Bayt, and as you know we said and I'll keep reiterating every time is that we're kind of taking this in a chronological order, looking at the contributions of Ahlul Bayt to try to get a better understanding and glimpse into their reality and their status and their position. Because they have, and especially when we talk about, these four, Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu, Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they are not only companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they're not just Sahabi. They are also Ahlul Bayt. So they have a double standard here. And unfortunately, what happens a lot of times is that, people start trying to compare the companions to Ahlul Bayt, and you're comparing apples to oranges. So there is a very important distinction here. Last week when we were talking, we kind of ended with the passing of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the beginning of the Khilafah of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. We spoke about him, being chosen as the Khalifa, and the various companions accepting him as the Khalifa. And as we said, after that meeting, when they returned, this is when Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu was coming out. He's the one who Ali radiallahu had the honor of bathing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he has the honor of placing him in the Rawdah. And so when he comes out, this is when Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu returning from this meeting, and they complete the burial process is completed. And so during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, towards the end, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he led 17 salat. So he led the ummah in 17 salat under the order of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is one of the characteristics of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, is that he never did anything without consulting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is even before Islam. We've talked about this when we've spoken about the virtues of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, that even when he was traveling, the last person he would meet before he left Mecca would be Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the first person he would meet when he returned to Makkah was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now, it's time, because after the funeral, it was time for Salat, for Maghrib. And, everyone lines up. So everybody lines up, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is standing in the first row. And Ali radiallahu anhu is in the third row. And so, Salat is ready, and no one's going forward to lead the Salat. And so here Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he makes the announcement. He said that I led 17 Salat during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam under the order of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now whoever is best amongst the ummah should lead the Salat. Ali radiallahu anhu, as I said, was in the third row, but he understands who he's hinting towards. And Ali radiallahu anhu has tears running down his cheeks, and as he comes forward, he places his hands on the shoulders of Abu Bakr from behind and nudges him forward as he says that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam placed you ahead, who can pull you behind? And these are certain points that I'm going to re-emphasize as we go along, because unfortunately there are a lot of people who try to create this animosity between Ali and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, that is non-existent, or between Abu Bakr and Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha, which again is non-existent. And so, one of the first questions that arises is that this, what happens now, because word spreads really quickly throughout Arabia as to what has happened, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has passed. And so as word is spreading, you have a lot of people that are now becoming apostates. So they are leaving Islam. And especially, or mainly those who had just entered Islam. So if you remember, after Fatih Makkah, which is 8th year of Hijri, 2 years before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 2 years before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passes, you have all of these people that came into Islam, all these delegations from them coming far and wide that are coming into Islam, and then and so now 2 years later Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passes, and now suddenly these same people are leaving Islam. You have various people who have declared themselves as prophets, one who's declared herself as a prophetess, mainly 5 people. The most famous amongst which is Musaylima. And we'll talk about him a little later on. So as this is going on, if you remember when we spoke about this last week, and we talked about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gathering or readying an army to go and deal with the threat from the Byzantines, from the Romans, and the leader of the army was Osama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu. And so the question arises, what about the army? What do we do with the army? And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself prepared the army. I am not stopping this army from going. So the army was sent out. This army basically had within it a large portion of the fighting men that were within Medina Munawwara. So now the major portion of fighters that would be in the city are now gone. Okay. At the same time, again, all of these groups are now apostating, and you have various groups that are coming to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and some of them, one of these groups, which is a large group, came to him and they said, look, they say our deal, was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so now that he has passed, and according to them, now that he is dead, then our deal died with him. So we don't want to give zakat. We want a new deal. And this is one of the things that we also mentioned last week. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even for the shuhada, for the martyrs, he says what? He says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ. That do not even think that those who have been slain in the way of Allah are dead. بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. That indeed they are alive, and they also receive their sustenance. And the other place, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ. That do not even say that those who have been slain in the way of Allah are dead. They are alive, but you don't perceive it. So if the shuhada are alive, then the anbiya are even above the shuhada. So if the martyrs are alive, the prophets are way above them. And Sayyidul Anbiya, the master of all of the prophets, is the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Important distinction here, though, is that the shuhada are in reality alive, but legally they are dead. Okay. So because they are alive, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they are alive, we don't perceive their life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to give them their rizq, their sustenance. So they in reality are more alive than we are alive. Okay. Legally they are dead because once they have been martyred, their wives after the period of mourning can marry, and their inheritance, whatever wealth they left behind, is distributed amongst their heirs. The prophets are alive in reality, but they are also alive legally. So again, their life is something we can't perceive. They continue to receive their sustenance, and very many other things. But for the prophets, their wives cannot remarry. And their inheritance, whatever they leave behind, is for the ummah. It is waqf for the ummah. It is not, no one inherits from them, in that sense. Okay? And this is the point that we're going to come back to as well, inshallah, when we talk about bid'ah. So this is an important distinction to note here. So of course these people that are coming are saying, oh, he died, he's dead. Our agreement with him is also dead with him. So now we want a new agreement in which we don't pay zakat. So when these people came to Abu Bakr, they came and they didn't just simply lay out, their position. They laid it out in a threatening way, that if you don't agree to what we're saying, we're going to attack. And again, the city is left without its defenders. So those companions that were there, Abu Bakr initially, he says, right off the bat, not just initially, but right off the bat, he says, this isn't going to work. There's no new deal. The deal with Rasulullah ﷺ still stands. It's not like he tasted death, and so now the deal with him is finished. That deal stands, now just as it stood then, and just as it will stand, till the end. So they said, well, think about it. They said, we'll give you a few days, think about it. So the various companions came to Abu Bakr, and they said to him, look, we don't have anybody to fight them with. How are we going to fight? The main army is gone. We have very few people left. All of Arabia is apostating. So with the exception of Hijaz, which meant Medina, Mecca, Taif, and a few local areas, everybody else is becoming the enemy. Those that had sworn to defend you are now the ones that are swearing that they're going to come and attack you. So they said to Abu Bakr, look, we don't have any other choice. So just agree with them for the moment, and then we'll deal with them later. You know, we hear that a lot. You know, just do it for the moment, and then you can clean it up later on. And that's not how Islam works. And those, you know, this is the same thing that's happened in various places where you had, you know, foreign forces and outside influences coming in. I name names like Afghanistan. And the scholars there said, oh no, we'll agree with this for the moment and then we'll clean it up later. You can't clean it up later. You know, it's like taking a glass of water, you know, and putting a few drops of urine in it. Yeah, you know, messing it up was very simple. Cleaning it up, that's a long task. So Abu Bakr radiallahu said no. Umar radiallahu pushes him for this as well. I mean, you think Umar is Umar, yet Umar radiallahu is also, you know, amongst those that are saying, look, you know, we don't have anybody to fight. What are we going to do? And Umar radiallahu also says, what about the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You know, because if we're attacked, they will be, you know, taken as prisoners of war. And Abu Bakr, you know, he says, you know, I'm worried about Islam, you're worried about a few women. And he says, if I have to fight them alone, I will fight them alone. To which Umar, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened the heart of Abu Bakr for jihad. But what really convinced the other companions, because their argument, one of the arguments, you had various arguments against fighting against these people. But one of the arguments was also, look, these are also Muslim. How can we do jihad against believers? And so it's Ali radiallahu anhu who comes. And we're going to see this throughout, and we've seen it already. I didn't, you know, bring a lot of attention to this point. Ali radiallahu anhu, one of his tasks that he's assigned with, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him, one of the authorities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him, is he's one of the alleviators of difficulties. So a simple example of this is, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the order for jihad. Jihad bin qital, pick up the sword and fight. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is rahmatul lil alameen. He is a mercy to all of creation. How can he pick up the sword and fight? Who alleviated that difficulty? Ali. Who was the sword of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Ali. Zulfiqar, the sword of Ali, in reality is the sword of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even if I look at it historically, you know, it was a gift given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by a group of Jewish people who were the descendants of Sulaiman alayhi salam, who came and met him in Medina Munawwara and accepted Islam at his hands, and they gave him this as a gift because this was the sword that Bilqis had given to Sulaiman alayhi salam as a gift. So they gifted it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hands it over to Ali. You take care of this. So the difficulty of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ali radiallahu took care of it. Now Abu Bakr radiallahu is in difficulty. Even those who should be supporting him are now arguing against him. Right? So Ali radiallahu is the one who comes. And when this argument is placed that, oh, how can we fight against them? They're believers, they're Muslims. So he recites the last half of verse number 6 and all of verse number 7 of Surah Fussilat, which is Surah number 41. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in that, وَيْلُ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ, woe unto the mushrikeen. الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. Those who do not give zakat, in the end, they are the disbelievers. See, in Islam, there are certain things that are obligations. course, zakat, salat, hajj, fasting in Ramadan, so. So these are the obvious ones that we know of. And all of these come after Iman, after La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I don't make salat, I've committed a major sin. But if I deny salat, if I say, oh no, it's not important, I don't need to make salat, then I've not only committed a major sin, I've actually I've exited Islam. So the same way with zakat. It's one thing not to give zakat, then it's a major sin, and your money is not lawful, it's not pure, unless you give zakat. But if I don't give zakat and then I justify not giving zakat, oh, there's no need to give for me to give zakat. I don't, there's no zakat on me, or there's, even though it is, or there's no zakat, then this is like a tax on the poor, or on us poor people. Everybody's poor, the people that have money think they're the poorest. Oh, this is a tax on us poor people. So if I take that attitude, then I've actually not only become a major sinner, I've in reality left Islam. So this is what Ahlul Bayt is referring to here. And this is what Ali rather re-emphasizes. I mean, they can be doing everything else. They can make, they can be reciting the kalma, they can be making salat, they can be making salat all day long and making tahajjud and everything else. They can be fasting every day and they can make hajj every year. But because they're denying zakat, none of that other stuff matters. Okay? So when Ali rather places his, explanation of what the reality of the situation is, this is when all of these companions who were in doubt as to what to do now come and support Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So this is an important thing to note. These wars that will go on for 6 months against these who have basically, against those who have apostated, those who have left Islam, they're known as the Rida Wars. And so they will go on for 6 months. Ali radiallahu anhu will not take part in the fighting of these wars. And of course people, they try to create an issue here as well. They say, oh, see, this is where Ali radiallahu anhu, he didn't support the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, then why, if he had supported it, then why didn't he go fight? The reality is, and this gets back to when we were talking about the knowledge and the status and the maqam of Ali. One is, if he had an issue, then why did he support Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in this? Of course, they'll deny that as well. It's easy to deny anything. But the other thing is, as we've said about Ali, he is the only companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who knew about every verse of the Quran, when it was revealed, where it was revealed, for whom it was revealed, and all of the context as to why it was revealed and what was going on when it was revealed. And so that's amongst his virtues, the virtues of Ali. And Abu Bakr radiallahu understands that if something happens to Ali, then all of that knowledge will be gone. So he wanted to make sure that that knowledge at least had time to get transferred. So even though Ali radiallahu himself wanted to go and fight, Ali is Ali, the sword, the man who's, you look at like even soldiers, like a regular soldier doesn't want to sit still. Something's going on, he's got to be in the middle of it. Ali, he is the master of soldiers. He's the one who in reality who taught soldiers how to be soldiers. So do you think all of this is going to be going on and he's going to be sitting still, not wanting to do anything? No. The other aspect of this is Ali is Asadullah. He is the lion of Allah. for those who want to claim that the Khilafah was stolen from him, that his rights were, and the rights of Ahlul Bayt were stolen by Abu Bakr and Umar. This in reality is an insult to Ali, that he allowed all of this to happen and didn't do anything. There is no one who could stand in front of Zulfiqar and survive. You look throughout the history of Ali, there is no one who stood, who could withstand the blow or the strike of Ali. No one. So do we think that these others can withstand that? So if he felt that his rights were being stolen, if the rights of the daughter of Rasulullah were being stolen, do you not think that he would have stood up? Of course he would have stood up. So this is why, again, he's wanting to go, but Abu Bakr knows that if he goes and something happens, where's all that knowledge going to go? And all that knowledge will be lost, and so he kind of holds him back. During this time as well, one of the things that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu does is that he takes all of the property of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he places it in Baytul Mal. And he does this without any explanation. He simply does it. And if you look at the property of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's not a small property. If we look at his property, like for example, Mukhayriq. Mukhayriq was one of the Jews in Medina Munawwara, and on the day of Uhud, Uhud was fought on Saturday. Okay? In Shawwal, it was a Saturday, and so Mukhayriq, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves to go to Uhud, and they left on the afternoon of Friday, which meant that sunset, the Sabbath started. So when they leave, he comes to his people because his people had signed an agreement with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying that if the Muslims were attacked, they would support them. So he goes to his people and he says to his people, he says, look, it is your obligation to help and defend this man. And so they say, today is the Sabbath. It's the holy day. And he says that you have no Sabbath. I mean, who are you? You violate the Sabbath for everything else, and now you're going to use this as an excuse not to support him when you already promised you would do this. So he leaves his people. He comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He arrives, on the morning of the day of Uhud, and he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, first he accepts Islam. He says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I feel that I will be martyred in this battle, that I will be killed in this battle, and I have 7 gardens in Medina Munawwara, all of which have water source, which is very unusual. All of them had wells, gardens of dates. He says, if something happens to me, they are yours. He was one of the first martyrs of Uhud. So all of that now comes to Rasulullah. So Rasulullah uses this as waqf for the Muslims. Because the Muslims are being boycotted. They have those who came from Mecca didn't have much to begin with. Now they're being boycotted, and so what do? So he says this goes to all of the proceeds and all of the fruits of this land go to the Muslims. 20% of the spoils of war were for Allah and His Messenger. In reality, all of the spoils of war are for Allah and His Messenger. And we see this in Surah Anfal. يَسَأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنْفَالِ Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts off the surah with, they ask you about the spoils of war. قُلِ الْأَنْفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Tell them that the spoils of war belong to Allah and His Messenger. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You know. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions the form of distribution of 80% goes to the fighters, 20% is for Allah and His Messenger. But even of the 80%, if Allah and His Messenger choose, they can do whatever they want. Alright? In reality, everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to His Habib. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is why the companions, they said to him, they say, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what you take or what you accept from us is more beloved to us than what you leave for us. So, you know, so you think about this, 20% of all of these, of the spoils of war from all of these battles, whatever land was amassed. Then you have Khaybar. Khaybar, you know, we talk about it as a fort city, but it's not just one fort. You had several forts. Huge date oases, you know, date palms, you know. Who was the conqueror of Khaybar? Ali, radiallahu anhu. You know, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had sent a companion, came back empty-handed. Sent another companion, came back empty-handed. Then he says, what? I'm going to give the banner, and we've talked about this, I'm going to give the banner tomorrow to the one who loves Allah and His Messenger and is loved by Allah and His Messenger, and he will conquer Khaybar. And who did he give it to? To Ali, radiallahu anhu. When the Jews in the area started seeing that Khaybar fell, and we'll come back to one of the issues about Khaybar as well. When they saw that Khaybar fell, there was another smaller town close by, Fidq. So they came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, we want a peace agreement on the same terms that you gave to the people of Khaybar. We don't want to fight. So the spoils of war in fighting for Allah and His Messenger is 20%, because it's known as Anfal. But there's something else known as Fay. Fay is when an army goes and the other side surrenders without any fighting. 100% of Fay is for Allah and His Messenger. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay. So Khaybar, 20%. Khaybar is huge. And the companion Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said that we did not eat our fill until after Khaybar. When Khaybar was conquered, then we had enough to eat to our fill. So you think about this, those companions who became Muslim very early on, for almost 20 years, never ate until they were full. And this also now is the sadaqah, is because of the actions of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, that now the companions are able to eat till they're filled. Fidq, again, is Fay, so 100% for Allah and His Messenger. And what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did was that all of the other properties, even though they were his, he would use the proceeds from that for the ummah. Okay. Fidq was different in that he used the proceeds from that for Ahlul Bayt, for the household. Again, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he takes all of this and he places it in Baytul Mal. And so all of those proceeds technically now become the property of the state. When he does this, Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha comes out of her house, which is a big deal in itself. So she comes out and she brings with her the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Abbas radiallahu anhu. And this is an important point to note here too. She doesn't bring Ali radiallahu anhu, she doesn't bring her two sons. She doesn't bring anybody else, she brings Abbas. So just remember that. And Abbas radiallahu anhu is the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is the great uncle of Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. She comes to Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and asks him about fidaq. That's all she does. She just asks him about fidaq. What about fidaq? And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's response is, and this response isn't in isolation. So it's not just her and Abbas radiallahu anh when she arrives there. When she arrives there, there are other companions there, including Sayyidina Ali karramallahu wajh. And so Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, when she asked, his response is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that we, the prophets, don't leave any inheritance, but what we leave is waqf for the ummah. And this is why I placed this in Baytul Mal. This is a trust for the ummah, and I placed this in Baytul Mal. So when he says this, you have all these other companions there. No one disputes him. No one says, no, he didn't say it. But what they say now is, oh, yes. Bi Fatima salamullah alayha, she doesn't say anything at all. She simply turns around and goes back home. And after that, and she doesn't speak to Abu Bakr, she doesn't say anything. She simply turns around and goes home. So people take this and they say, oh, she was upset with him. She was angry with him. So she left without saying anything. And she went, so Abu Bakr took her rights. So this is the accusation against Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. And in reality it becomes an accusation against her as well. And I'll explain that in a minute. When you look at any situation, whether it's historical or even today, when you look at what somebody does, you always want to look at the character of that person. This is important to understand. You want to look at the character of the person doing the thing. Because you can have two people in appearance doing the same thing, but because of their background and their character, these are the end result is totally different. And the simple example of this is Abu Bakr and Abu Jahl. After the ascension, the Miraj of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he comes back and they ask about a caravan, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells them where the caravan is, and long story short, so now each group is going out waiting for that caravan to come. Abu Jahl is taking a group with him to wait for that caravan to come because he wants to show that, oh, see, what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said was wrong. And Abu Bakr is going out with a group of his friends, going out waiting for the caravan because he wants to show that nothing that comes from the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can be wrong. In appearance, the action is the same, but the reality of each one's action is totally different. So the same way, when you see one person doing something and another person doing the same thing, it doesn't mean that it's the same thing in reality. And the other simple example that I like to give for this is, if I say that John cut Jim's stomach, well, it's very different if John is a murderer cutting Jim's stomach, whereas John is a surgeon cutting Jim's stomach. So simply knowing that background about who you're talking about changes the whole meaning and the whole perception of what's going on. So when we look at Abu Bakr, so we're looking at the two people that are involved in this. One asking the question and one giving an answer to the question. So when I look at Abu Bakr, the answer of the question, this is the person who spent his whole wealth on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He left his family. He spent his whole wealth in the defense of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the person who is the only person whose companionship you can directly prove through the Quran, because of the verse in Surah Tawbah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the companion of the cave. Who is he talking about? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. This is a person against whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not willing to hear any complaints. There are two people, Abu Bakr and Ali, who had complaints against them, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not hear any complaints. If anybody came and complained about them, he would chastise the one who was complaining. So this is what you have on one side. On the other side, you have a person who is the daughter of Rasulullah. She is the one in whose house the Quran is revealed. She is the pure. She is the one for whom Rasulullah said, Al-badatu minni, that she is a part of me. She is the one who in all of these difficulties never complained. You look at all of the difficulties. Surah Insan, Surah Dahar, Surah Insan, which is in Juz number 29. I'm blanking on the number of the surah. The whole surah is revealed in honor of Ahlul Bayt. And in that surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. That those are the ones who, even though they are in need, they feed the poor, the orphan, and the prisoners. And then they say that we don't, that all we look forward to is for the face of Allah, meaning the pleasure of Allah. That's the only reason we did this, and we don't want anything from you, not even a thank you. So the verses were revealed. Why? Because in the house of Fatima, salamullah alayha, there was no food. Ali goes out and works all day for a few loaves of bread. They had been fasting all day. He comes home. They're about to break the fast. Knock on the door. Who is it? It's a beggar asking for something in the name of Allah. Ali comes in. He says to his wife, Fatima salamullah alayha, this is what's going on. She says, and everything that they have, they give to him. They drink some water, break their fast with the water, go to sleep, including the children, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The next day he goes out, he works all day. They're fasting all day because there's nothing to eat. Fasting all day, works all day, few loaves of bread, comes home. Now they're about to sit to break the fast, and suddenly the same thing, a knock on the door. Now it's a yatim, it's an orphan. Same thing, they give them all the bread. Third day, the same thing. This time it's not, it's a prisoner. Give them everything. These are the people that if you ask them for a drop, they gave you the river. And so when this happens, this is when Jibreel al-Islam comes to Rasulullah. He says, Ya Rasulullah, we, the angels, can't stand this. Please do something. There is famine in the house of your daughter. She never came to him to complain. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein al-Islam never complained. And they're young boys, literally toddlers at this age. Ali never complains. So these are people who have already denied the world. So do we think that they're going to argue over a small piece of land? And when Abu Bakr he says this, he says that Rasulullah said this. But then he also adds in that, he says that, but I'm going to distribute the wealth in accordance with what Rasulullah was doing already. Meaning that this wealth will still go to the take care of the needs of the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now the question arises, if this is her character, then why did she even come out to ask for it? Because another aspect of her character is that she was totally in line with the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this isn't me saying this, this is the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Bibi Aisha Siddiqa radhiyallahu and other wives saying this, who said that they never saw anyone more on the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. To the extent that when she walked, they couldn't distinguish her walk from the walk of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did I say earlier? That anyone who criticized Abu Bakr, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would chastise them. Anyone who complained against Abu Bakr, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would chastise them. Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu has taken this step without any explanation. He has opened himself for criticism. Because somebody later on could say, oh, how could he do this? Because he didn't explain why he did it. So why is Fatima salamullah alayha coming? For the defense. So now this forces Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu to say why he's done this. Once he's given the explanation, she quietly goes home because she's completed her task. She doesn't need to go any further. She doesn't need to ask anything else. So she goes. She brought with her Abbas to emphasize this point, because if she was asking for this, expecting to get something, she should have brought somebody who also could have inherited from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She should have brought Ali radhiyallahu anhu. She should have brought Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein radhiyallahu anhu. She did not. She brings Abbas radhiyallahu anhu, who has no share in the inheritance from any standpoint, to emphasize these points. So when she quietly goes home, you know, the lover is always anxious that maybe the one that he loves is upset with him. So she asks him the question, he gives her the explanation, she quietly goes home. Doesn't say anything. Turns around, walks away. Abu Bakr, when he made the earlier statement, he also says, that I love to do good to the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than I love to do good to my own household. But now he's concerned. Maybe she is upset with me. But she didn't say anything. So he goes, that afternoon he goes to the house. He knocks on the door. Ali answers the door. He says, I'm Khalifatul Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Amir al-Mu'mineen, that title doesn't come in until Umar radhiyallahu anhu. Khalifatul Rasul, what are you doing here? He says, I want to talk to Fatima salamullah alayha. I'm afraid she might be upset with me. So let me ask her. So he comes in, and she asks, who's at the door? She says, Abu Bakr. And she says, why has he come? He says, he wants to talk to you. So he's asking permission to come in. So she says, fine. Curtain is raised. He comes in. And then he makes a statement. He walks in, he gives salam. And he says to her, that that for me, life is not worth living if you are upset with me. This is the leader of the Muslims. The companion, the befriended companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's coming to her and he says, that life, none of this that I have is worth anything if you are upset with me. and you know that I did not leave my family, immigrate, and leave my wealth, except for the pleasure of Allah, for the pleasure of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and for the pleasure of Ahlul Bayt. So again, these are not people who have animosity against each other and all these other things that people try to make up to create issues between them. So, this again, we're this is the attitude of Abu Bakr toward the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the statement of that he loves to do good to the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam above even doing good to his own household. I mean, this is a very well-known statement, but people don't think about it. This is in the Sahih Hadith, but we don't think about it. Why is he making this statement? And this is Abu Bakr. He's not going to make a statement that's not coming from his heart. So
can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Abu Bakr born as a Muslim, or he was not Muslim before?
Yeah. So the question is, was Abu Bakr then born as Muslim or not Muslim? When you look at the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 40 when he declares his prophethood, right?
Okay.
Abu Bakr is 2 years younger than him.
2 years younger.
Yeah, so he's 38. So this is when he accepts Islam. But if you look at his character, he never drank before Islam. He never worshipped the idols before Islam. He was amongst those who followed or tried to follow the religion of the Hanif, which was the religion that, as best as they could follow, the original religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Okay. But he was also, because of his connection with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never did any of these things, because he was a friend of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from childhood. They were together from childhood as friends, and then and again, like I said, even before Islam, he would never do anything without first consulting with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was his nature, and this was his love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam even before Islam. Okay. So I'm gonna basically kind of end here today. There's some other aspects of fida, but again, we see this again. This is where people try to create issues, and then there are others, like idiots, and you can't say anything decent about these people who claim to be Sunnis, and then they want to find fault with Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha. Oh, she made a mistake by asking for fida. That was a khata. And then they want to justify it like, oh, it was a khata ijtihadi, that it was her, so there's no khata here. Again, you have to look at who's doing what to understand why they're doing it. If she sat there and tried to argue with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if she sat there and tried to argue with Abu Bakr about, oh no, this is mine and you need to give it to me, then somebody could try to make that argument, okay? But she doesn't. You look at the hadith. The hadith simply says she asked, and when Abu Bakr gave this explanation, she didn't say anything further. And this is where the other people say, oh, see, she didn't say anything, so she was upset with him. So she was so mad that she didn't say anything else. I mean, yeah. I mean, what can you say about these people? Other than they have no understanding about who they're talking about. Because, and this is what happens, with us, is we project ourselves onto them. We look at ourselves and we're worldly people, and so we try to make them, when we think about them, we think about them in our own terms. Yes. And these are, I mean, we are not them and they are not us. These are the people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certified already. So because the thing is, this is what happens with a lot of people, and especially when we're reading history. What would I have done if I was there? And you see we see people even, they'll be talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they'll make these type of statements about, oh, what would you do? Well, it's not you. And they try to explain things in the terms of, oh, if I had been there, I would have done this. I mean, you're not there. So, and what can you say again? I mean, you can't say anything good about people who think like that. And that's why I also talked about, everybody is biased. Anybody who says they're not biased doesn't know what the term means, or they're lying. So everyone is biased, but we need to bias ourselves in accordance with what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam want us to bias ourselves according to. So these people are biased in the sense of, oh, if it was me, what would I do? Which is the wrong bias. Any other questions?
Well, I have one more question.
Yes.
At what point you pay zakat?
Zakat.
How much you have to have, and that way you have no choice but what zakat.
Yeah, so sahib and nisab, which is a general term, which it's, I'm forgetting exactly how much. It's roughly about 3 ounces, the equivalent of wealth of 3 ounces of gold. So these days gold, and there's another calculation you do by silver, which is much less. Okay. But
that's money-wise.
So money-wise, gold is what, about $2,000 an ounce, so roughly about $6,000.
So when you have $6,000, then you got to make this again.
Well, so you have $6,000, okay, and you've had that $6,000 for a year. Okay. So now you have to give zakat. Okay. Now, if once that becomes sahib and nisab, so let's say I've got $6,000, and I've had that, and by the end, so now I become sahib and nisab. So before that, I didn't have that much money. Okay. So now I have that much money, right? Okay. So let's say it's August, or it's this is Safar. So the beginning of Safar, first of Safar, I had $6,000, and by the next year, by the time of Safar, first of Safar, I have $10,000. So 6,000 put me over the limit. Okay. So now I have $10,000. So the zakat will be on the $10,000. You don't get that? Okay. So
you say there's no zakat until 6,000.
Yes. So now or there is no obligation of zakat until 6,000.
Okay.
But we're throwing that number out right now because that's the rate of gold at this time. That could change.
Okay.
Okay. But we're going to use that as a simple number. Okay, just understand that.
Not an actual number, just a...
Yeah, simple number. Okay, so let's say 6,000 is the number.
Okay.
So I'm, before that I didn't have that much money. So the first of Safar, I got that much money, right? Okay. And and by the next year though, I have even more money. Okay. So most people, okay, if you've been saving or whatever, now you've got more money, right? So there are people that have tried to say, oh no, you give the difference, which is not accurate. So the zakat, so next year, let's say by the next year Safar, instead of 6,000, now I have more money. I've got $10,000. Okay. So when I give my zakat, it's going to be on the 10,000. So I'll calculate 2.5% of 10,000, which is what, $250. So $250 I would give in zakat.
So what about the money go down, like the 6,000, and by next year it's going to become 2,000, 1,000?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're not obligated to give zakat because you didn't maintain sab and nisab for a year. You see. So let's say 6,000 is the thing. I've got $6,000, and first of suffer. But then by the next month, I only got $4,000, and by the next year I only have $2,000. Well, yeah, zakat. I'm not obligated to give zakat.
So you say the year start with when you have a 6,000.
Yes, that's when the time starts.
No one doesn't want
Well, again, I'm using 6,000 as a rough number because gold is roughly, like I said, it's roughly about 3 ounces of gold.
Talk about gold over here. And
well, gold.
where you live.
Well, gold is gold everywhere now. They've got a set rate on it.
But the price might be different from here and there. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but see, that's going to be different currency though. But if you start translating currencies, it's going to come out to about the same. Is all the international trade. It used to be, there was a time when it was different, but now it's not. And of course so that includes like jewelry and stuff.
Where you live, it make it different.
What's that now?
Where you live, it make it different.
Not really.
Like you live in this country, but the other side of the country is a different way, or
No. It's the same. Yeah, so where you are doesn't make a difference as to how much zakat you're going to be giving.
still the same way.
Yeah, same calculations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think I covered a pretty decent amount today.
I had a question about last week.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
because I was at work last week, but I watched it.
The video.
So, when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was passed,
Yes.
so people say, when the companions came out and said if they use it if he's dead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the question is, I need to look up the verse exactly, but I'll. The question is, when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passed. So the incident is that Omar, when the news spread, so Omar pulls out his sword, and he says to the people, everybody there, he says to them that if anybody says that, I will chop off his head. Okay. And he is not dead. He's simply gone to meet Allah, like Musa alayhi salam went to meet Allah, and we'll be back. Or rather, he's simply gone to meet Allah, and he's not dead. So this is what Umar is saying. And this is in the middle of the masjid. So Abu Bakr, when this is going on, he simply walks past Umar, reciting the verse of the Quran, which is in Surah Al Imran. That the rough translation of which is that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a messenger, like those who have passed before. So this is in relation to when the rumor spread in Uhud that he had been martyred, and some people just gave up. What's the use? So that's why the verse was revealed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a messenger, as messengers that have passed before and have gone before. So they came and they went. So if he were to die, and the question there is, if he were to die, would you turn on your heels? Which is interesting because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say there, when he dies, will you turn on your heels? There's a big difference between saying if this happens and when this happens. So Abu Bakr recites this verse, and when Umar hears this verse, and even the other companions, like Uthman and all the other companions there, they said that it was as if we had heard the verse for the first time. And this pulls Umar back into the present. All right. So they want to use this and say that, oh, See, so there's nothing wrong with saying he's dead. You know, and he died like anybody else died. And so, several problems with that. One is when Umar radiallahu makes a statement, no one stood up and said, "Oh, you're doing shirk." No one said that. And even afterwards, no one told Umar radiallahu, and he himself didn't, tell him that, "Oh, you need to retake your shahada because you've committed shirk." And because if you commit shirk, you can't simply say the kalma and come back into Islam. You have to say the kalma with the intention of coming back into Islam. If I do a sin that takes me out of the religion, I can't simply, I can recite the kalma 1,000,000 times and I'm still not Muslim until I recite the kalma with the intention of coming back into Islam. No one told Umar radiallahu to do that. He himself didn't do it. No one said, "Oh, you've committed shirk."
Like you said, a certain thing can make you become this Muslim, this Islam, and get you out of Islam.
What's that now?
Certain word used.
Certain things, yes. The question is, certain things can take you out of Islam.
Yes,
yes.
Like
Well, such as denying something that's fard. For example, if I say, "Oh, salat is not necessary. I don't need to make salat." What's the use in making salat?
Okay, it got to be something very reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Like,
You have to say,
and
simply, small things don't take you out of Islam.
Okay.
Okay, so a lot of people, they accuse everybody of shirk, but they're doing the same thing and they're the best Muslim. Like you can't ask help from anybody except Allah, and then they turn around, "Brother, give me a ride." Why are you asking me for help? Go ask Allah, right?
I mean, that's a good question too, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you ask everything for God, but at the same time, you need a ride. I mean, how you gonna get a ride?
Yeah, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us asbab. He's given us means, right? And He's given certain of His slaves authority. So, for example, if I'm sick, I'm not going to go to the plumber and tell him, "Okay, what medicine should I take?" Even though these days everybody goes to Google, who's not much better than a plumber as far as medicine. Okay? You're going to go to somebody who knows, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that knowledge to, right? Because all knowledge is from Allah. Anybody who says, "Oh, I've done this and that," and like, again, when I talk about the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they want to say, "Oh, it's from Allah." Well, I know it's from Allah. But then when you talk about the knowledge of their scholars and praise their scholars, "Oh, he's such a knowledgeable scholar in this," and they never mention, "Oh, his knowledge is from Allah." But when it comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they always have to pound that. Who thinks that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's knowledge is from himself? No one says that. The knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from Allah, and his knowledge is not like my knowledge. His knowledge is directly from Allah. So when Abu Bakr, so you understand that, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So when Abu Bakr makes this statement, he is simply, Umar radiallahu is in this state of ecstasy, this overwhelming emotion, that he's lost control. So he pulls out his sword. It's not just he's making the statement, he's got the sword drawn and ready to go. And saying, "If anybody says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has died, I will chop their head off." He is simply gone like Musa alayhi salam went to meet his Lord. And my question is here, what is he talking about there? People don't explain that part either, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Abu Bakr, seeing the situation, he realizes that he needs to take Umar out of the reality and back into the Sharia. Sharia deals with what is apparent and what can be proven. even though the reality may be something different. A simple example of this. Somebody is accused of adultery. I accuse somebody of adultery. I don't have 4 witnesses. What does the Sharia say? That that person will be let free, I will be punished. Even though the reality may be, I may be right, he may have actually committed adultery. But the Sharia deals with what is proven, what is apparent and what can be proven. Even though the reality may be something different. Umar radhiyallahu anhu is speaking from the standpoint of reality. Bal ahya, they are alive. But Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu needs to bring him back to the apparent situation. So he simply recites that verse. And when he recites the verse, it shocks him and brings him back into the apparent. Again, if he had said something wrong, then why didn't Abu Bakr tell him, oh, you need to take your shahada again? Because, this is not a small thing. And especially those people, when I say, oh, Rasulullah is right, oh, you've committed shirk. Which means, if I've committed shirk, then I've left Islam. So, but again, even when I look at the verse that he recited, the verse doesn't say when he dies, the verse says if he dies. They don't want to pay attention to that part of it. And even, there's a huge difference in when and if. And Osman is asking, if something happens to him, if he passes, are you going to turn on your heels? Well, now he's passed, but the reality is again, bal ahya. Because otherwise, if he's dead, then why can't his wives marry off? Why isn't his inheritance given to those who to his daughter and to his grandchildren? Because that's not, the nature of the prophets.
So no prophet is dead.
No prophet is dead, but they all tasted death. There's a difference. There's also a difference between tasting something and eating something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Dha'iqa, tasting death.
Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut.
Yes. Right?
I mean, I've seen it a thousand times.
Yes.
Especially
You've heard it.
Especially when you walk by the cemetery.
Yes. And funerals, everybody, right?
I mean, I've seen it when I was back home. Every time we go by the cemetery, that's right.
Yes. Yeah. So dha'iqa, there's a difference between tasting something and eating something. Yeah. When death comes to us, we don't just taste it, we eat it. Yeah. But for them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them a taste of it, and then, their souls are returned to them. With authority. And that's the other point. And we'll get into that a little later on, inshallah.
So the body, I was asking the same question, I don't know why I'm going to ask you again, the body's still same, right? Even though
Yes, for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the body is still the same.
So wouldn't that be, wouldn't it fall into both of the categories? Repaired,
Which one? No.
When you're saying it's 2 categories, the apparent, what you said about Omar, he had to bring him back.
Yeah, he had to bring him back from the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because Umar radhiyallahu anhu is speaking from a different level now.
Mm-hmm.
When he's overwhelmed with these emotions, now he's speaking from a different perspective.
But I was saying, is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where it can be proven too?
Well, yeah. Yes. It can be proven, but you have to have the eyes to be able to see that proof. And that's the problem with most people, is they want to close their eyes and talk about the subject. And you've seen that.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring this up and suddenly, it's like the minds are shut. You know. And there's no, and then, like Southern Baptist, but I still believe, I still believe, okay, wait a minute, let's talk about the arguments here, let's talk about the discussion here. What are the points? Because you start reading the Quran, and you look at the ahadith, and even if you didn't have those ahadith, if I look at simply the verses of the Quran, and even this one, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. I mean, that is such a broad statement that covers so many different aspects of things. He is a mercy to all of creation. There is no limitation of time. So he is a mercy. He is sent as a mercy to all of creation. Doesn't mean that he was sent and then taken back. That okay, now you're no longer a mercy to all of creation. That verse stands today as it stood back then, as it stood, even when it was still in Lawh Mahfuz. So even that, again, that gets into so many different aspects of things. You just start thinking about that one verse of the Quran, and it's just, door after door after door that starts opening. Anything else? Did that sort of cover it?
Yeah, because it's the same way, because they talk about the other one when she says, if you worship Allah, then He's alive, but if you worship something like that.
Yeah, so that's this is one of the statements of Abu Bakr. He says that if you worship Allah, know that He is alive. He is haya forever. But if someone worships Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then know that He has passed. Again, He doesn't say that He's dead like us. So they want to play with the words. And then they accuse us of trying to play with the words. Yeah. So inshallah we'll end here today.
So the sword of Hazrat Ali given was passed from Bilqis to Sulaiman alayhi salam to a group of Jews.
Yeah, well, see, he's asking about Dhul Fiqar. So it was a gift from Bilqis to Sulaiman alayhi salam. And then it passed down through the generations of Sulaiman alayhi salam, through his progeny. And this group of Jewish people that came to meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were from the lineage of Sulaiman alayhi salam. So this is why they had it. So they were his descendants who gave it as a gift to him.
Was it the sword of Bilqis or someone called?
I don't know. He's asking if it was the sword of Bilqis. I don't know if sometimes, a lot of times, like back then, when they would go and visit kings, you always took gifts. Even if one king went to go and visit another king, the king would bring gifts, and they would exchange gifts. So whether this was made like a special gift sword, or was it used in battle before, I don't know. From what I've understood, this was a gift to him. So this was brought as a gift.
Sulaiman is also a Jewish prophet.
Sulaiman al-Islam is one of the prophets who was sent to Bani Israel. So again, most of the 25 prophets that are named in the Quran were prophets, and most of the prophets, even throughout history, were prophets that were sent to Bani Israel, to the children of Israel, to the Jews.
I mean, is there any purpose?
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah,
don't want to listen.
Well, yeah. yeah, there is a purpose, and why they were a favored nation. So we will get. That's something you've asked before, and I have not forgotten, and it's something that we will cover, inshallah.
Because Islam only got one prophet.
Actually, all of them are prophets of Islam.
I mean,
but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the master of all of the prophets. He is the leader and the master of all the prophets. Okay.
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, we'll go over that soon, inshallah. But and I might digress onto that next week, but that gets into, you know, but it makes other things easier to understand too once we get into that. So inshallah next week we'll cover part of that as we're continuing on with Ahlul Bayt, inshallah. So it'll make it easier to understand certain things connected to Ahlul Bayt as well. Okay? Inshallah. Anything else? Alright. So inshallah we'll end here. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد بارك May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand and fill our hearts with His love and the love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all of his family and companions and all of those whom we love each other. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.